Hallo Deutschlerner! Today I'm going to explain to you the basics of the modal verbs in German, also known as modal auxiliaries or Modalverben in German. So, I'm going to go through the list of the modal verbs, how they're used, what the conjugation of them is, and all of the things that you might need when you first encounter the modal verbs in German. First one on our list for today is mögen. Mögen. Mögen means to like. And when you conjugate a modal auxiliary, the first three forms are going to be a bit odd, and the bottom three forms are going to be normal. So, in this case, we have an O umlaut changing into an A, and the ich in the RZS form don't get an ending at all. So, we have ich mag, du magst, sie es mag, wir mögen, ihr mögt, sie mögen. As I mentioned, this verb means to like, so in a few example sentences here, we can see how it's used. Ich mag Züge. Ich mag Züge. I like trains. Ich mag Züge. I like trains. Mag Pizza. Mag Pizza. He likes pizza. Mag Pizza. Wir mögen Baseball. Wir mögen Baseball. We like baseball. Wir mögen Baseball. As you can see from these examples, we basically just have mögen followed by an object of some sort to indicate that we like that object. If you like an activity, you are probably better served by using the word gern and that other verb that you like. So you could say something like, ich spiele gern, I like to play, and follow it up with baseball. Ich spiele gern Baseball. And that would make a lot more sense than whenever you're trying to use mögen. Mögen is almost exclusively used with an object and no additional verb in the sentence. That's a little bit of a contrast to all of the other modal verbs on our list for today, and that is that the reason some people call them modal auxiliaries is that they are auxiliary verbs. In other words, they are helping verbs. They're verbs that go along with other verbs in a sentence. The only exception to that is mögen, which it can be used as a helping verb, but generally speaking, then it changes the meaning from we like to do this versus we may do this, we might do this. So it's a bit of a difference of meaning of what you actually were looking for, and at the beginner level, it's probably not what you meant. So, for the most part, keep away from using mögen with an extra verb. Next up on our list we have möchten. Möchten is technically not an additional modal auxiliary or modal verb. Möchten is basically what happens if an artist drops a new album and on that album they have a few bonus tracks, but one of the bonus tracks is basically just like the same song but kind of a remix. And that's what möchten is. Möchten is a remix to mögen. Mögen is to like, and the subjunctive mood, or the Konjunktiv 2 version of that, would be möchten, or at least one of the forms of that would be möchten. We sometimes show this word möchten in a textbook in German as if it's its own verb, but to be fair, it's not. It's just a form of mögen that is so commonly used as would like, and it's used for polite requests and stuff like that. It's so often used like that that we pretend it's its own verb, even though it's technically not. To conjugate möchten, we have a slight change from what you might see in other forms, and that is that we keep the umlaut for all of the forms of möchten. Ich möchte. Du möchtest. Sie, es möchte. Wir möchten. Ihr möchtet. Sie möchten. As you can see, again, the ich and the RZS form are the same. This actually has to do with the way that the subjunctive mood, or the Konjunktiv 2, is formulated, but it is helpful that all of the modal auxiliaries follow this same pattern, that ich and RZS are going to be the same. If you're wondering how we got from mögen into möchte, If you follow the verb mögen, we have the infinitive form, or the form that you'll find in the dictionary, and we start with that. If you change that into the past tense, you end up with mochte, like I liked something, past tense. Once we get to the past tense, if you add umlauts, that's generally how you make the Konjunktiv 2, or the subjunctive mood of things. So, this is how we came from mögen into möchte. Mochte is the past tense as our kind of in-between, and möchte is the final product. Here are a few examples of möchten in sentences. Was möchten Sie bestellen? Was möchten Sie bestellen? What would you like to order? Was möchten Sie bestellen? Notice here we have two verbs. We have möchten, which is conjugated there to go with Sie and at the beginning of the sentence for this question. Then we have bestellen at the end of the sentence. This is the infinitive form of the verb bestellen, or to order in English. Bestellen has that en at the end of it, and it is not conjugated. But möchten is conjugated. It goes with Sie in this sentence. This is what happens when a modal auxiliary or a modal verb is used with an additional verb. It pushes the other verb to the end of the sentence, and it's used in its infinitive form, or the form that you'll find in the dictionary. Ich möchte den Rinderbraten bestellen. Ich möchte den Rinderbraten bestellen. I would like to order the roast beef. Ich möchte den Rinderbraten bestellen. Here you'll notice that I have bestellen in parentheses, and that's because just as you can in English leave out to order in this sentence, you can leave out bestellen in the sentence in German. It changes the sentence ever so slightly in meaning, but it's still basically the same idea. Ich möchte den Rinderbraten. I would like the roast beef. Ich möchte den Rinderbraten. This will only happen if you can imply the other verb, meaning that whenever you leave out that other additional verb at the end of the sentence, does it still make sense? Does it still have the same meaning without it? Can we assume what the verb would be even though it's not there? If the answer is yes, it is okay to leave out that extra verb. If it is not, then we need to, of course, keep that in there so that the context makes sense. Our last example here is Wir möchten nach Hause gehen. Wir möchten nach Hause gehen. We would like to go home. Wir möchten nach Hause gehen. Nach Hause, all by itself, means towards home, so we don't necessarily need the verb gehen to tell us that we are going home. We do need it in English because it wouldn't work out English-wise for grammar if we leave out to go. If you just say, I would like to home, or I would like home, that doesn't have the same meaning in English. But in German, because of the context of nach Hause, we can tell here that we mean gehen or fahren or reisen or whatever mode of transportation you're using to go home. But we know that it's going in some way, and so we can imply that verb without explicitly saying it in the sentence. Next up, we have what I call the end of the 3 M's. If you don't know, 3M is a company that makes things like Scotch tape and other kinds of tape and things that stick to walls, basically. But this is the end of the 3 M's. I like to put the 3 M's first, just so that I make sure that I have all 3 of them on my list of modal auxiliaries, or modal verbs. Müssen is the next one, and müssen means must, or to have to. When we conjugate this one, we lose the umlaut for the top 3 forms, and we gain it back for the bottom 3. Again, the ich and ers form do not have an ending to go on them, but the du form does. The conjugation of müssen goes like this. Ich muss. Du musst. Sie, es muss. Wir müssen. Ihr müsst. Sie müssen. Again, no umlauts in the top half, but umlauts in the bottom half. Here are a few examples of müssen in action. Ich muss mein Zimmer aufräumen. Ich muss mein Zimmer aufräumen. I have to clean my room. Ich muss mein Zimmer aufräumen. Sie muss den Müll rausnehmen. Sie muss den Müll rausnehmen. She has to take out the trash. Sie muss den Müll rausnehmen. Wir müssen bald gehen. Wir müssen bald gehen. We have to go soon. Wir müssen bald gehen. Notice in each one of these sentences we again have an infinitive at the end of the sentence. In the first two examples, I use separable prefixes. Separable prefixes are usually removed from the verb and put at the end of the sentence. But since we're using the infinitive form of our verbs here, we have aufräumen as one word and rausnehmen as one word. That's because our separable prefixes of auf and raus are there stuck together back again as the infinitive of the verb. In the last example, you'll notice that I left gehen in there without the parentheses around it this time. And that is because gehen is not implied in this in any way. If we just say wir müssen bald, we need to know more context to figure out what we have to do for the end of the sentence. After we've learned the three M's of the modal verbs, I like to move on to alphabetical order after that, and we go to dürfen. Dürfen means may, or to be allowed to do something. So this is often used for asking for permission to do something. When we conjugate this verb, we have to use an A where there used to be a U umlaut for the ich, du, and RZS forms. Again, the ich and RZS form do not have an ending, but the du form has an ST. The full conjugation is as follows. Ich darf, du darfst, sie, es darf, wir dürfen, ihr dürft, sie dürfen. Here are a few examples of how you might use dürfen in a sentence. Darf ich auf die Toilette? Darf ich auf die Toilette? May I go to the restroom? Darf ich auf die Toilette? As in previous examples, auf die Toilette indicates motion towards the toilet, and therefore, of course, we do not need gehen at the end of the sentence. If you want to, of course, you could add it in there. Ihr dürft nicht in der Klasse schlafen. Ihr dürft nicht in der Klasse schlafen. You are not allowed to sleep in the class. Ihr dürft nicht in der Klasse schlafen. Die Kinder dürfen nicht die ganze Nacht aufbleiben. Die Kinder dürfen nicht die ganze Nacht aufbleiben. The children are not allowed to stay up the entire night. Die Kinder dürfen nicht die ganze Nacht aufbleiben. After dürfen, we have können. Können means can, or to be able to. For the conjugated forms of können, you can notice the evolution of the English language with kann and can, and the relationship that is clearly there between those two. Again, ich and RZS have no ending, but the du form has an ST. The first three forms require an A in the middle, whereas the last three require an O umlaut. The full conjugation is as follows. Ich kann, du kannst, sie, es kann, wir können, ihr könnt, sie können. Here are a few examples of the verb können in action. Ich kann Deutsch sprechen. Ich kann Deutsch sprechen. I can speak German. Ich kann Deutsch sprechen. Kann fliegen. Kann fliegen. He can fly. Kann fliegen. Meine Eltern können immer Probleme finden. Meine Eltern können immer Probleme finden. My parents can always find problems. Meine Eltern können immer Probleme finden. After können, we'll move on to sollen. Sollen does not have an umlaut to begin with, so when we conjugate this one, we do not lose an umlaut, nor do we gain an umlaut anywhere in this chart. The ich and the RZS form don't have an ending again, but all of the rest of the forms are perfectly normal, and we have the same endings and the same stem that we had before when we conjugated normal verbs. The conjugation of sollen is as follows. Ich soll. Du sollst. Sie, es soll. Wir sollen. Ihr sollt. Sie sollen. Here are a few examples of the verb sollen in action. Du sollst deine Hausaufgaben machen. Du sollst deine Hausaufgaben machen. You should or shall do your homework. Du sollst deine Hausaufgaben machen. Soll einen Kuchen backen. Soll einen Kuchen backen. He should or is supposed to bake a cake. Soll einen Kuchen backen. Sollen wir gehen? Sollen wir gehen? Should we go? Shall we go? Sollen wir gehen? A word of caution, the forms that are used in these examples here are more like commands than they are suggestions. If you're going to say, you should do this, as in, I recommend this, this is my recommendation to you, you need the Konjunktiv 2 versions of this. Those forms would be ich sollte, du solltest, sie, es sollte, wir sollten, ihr solltet, and sie sollten. Those are the forms you're going to use if you are making suggestions or recommendations. If you mean more of a command version and you're saying, you're going to do this, as in when your mom says you should do your homework, she's not suggesting you do your homework, she's saying, go do your homework. In that same instance, when you say, du sollst deine Hausaufgaben machen, you're really saying, you are going to do your homework now. You shall do this. Next up is the last of the actual modal auxiliaries, and that is wollen. Wollen means to want. To conjugate wollen, we remove the O and replace it with an I for the first three forms. Then the O comes back for the last three forms. Again, the ich and the RZS form do not take endings. Ich will. Du willst. Sie, es will. Wir wollen. Ihr wollt. Sie wollen. You may recognize that will is in there. It looks like will, sounds a lot like will, but does not mean will. This is not something that is used for the future tense. This is a place where the German and the English languages kind of diverged when they were evolving at the same time. So what happened here is we have will as in thy will be done, and we have will as in this is what's going to happen, future tense. Those two things used to be used differently throughout the English language, and German, whenever it was evolving, did not make that divergence. So we now have will as in to want, and this is the reason that your last will and testament tells you what it is that you want to happen to all of your stuff once you're gone. Those things are all will or will in the same way. I mention this because when we get to the next thing, the thing that's still blacked out there, that is when we're going to be talking about will using the future tense. But for now, wollen means to want, and that's how we're using it in the following examples. Ich will in Beifall untergehen. Ich will in Beifall untergehen. I want to go down in applause. Ich will in Beifall untergehen. For those of you who don't know, that's from a Rammstein song called Ich will. You should definitely check out the song Ich will by Rammstein because that will make it so that you never forget the conjugation of wollen. Will den ganzen Kuchen essen. Will den ganzen Kuchen essen. He wants to eat the entire cake. Will den ganzen Kuchen essen. Wir wollen unser Auto nicht mehr. Wir wollen unser Auto nicht mehr. We no longer want our car. Wir wollen unser Auto nicht mehr. In this last one, you'll notice that I left off the verb again at the end. This verb could be haben. But because we are just saying the car is the thing that we don't want in this sentence, we don't necessarily need an extra verb. Whereas in the first two examples with untergehen and essen, we require those extra verbs to give us more context for the sentence. The last verb on our list for today is not a modal auxiliary. This verb is werden. Werden is used to form the future tense. Why do I bring it up now? It's used almost exactly the same way that the modal auxiliaries are, meaning that when you use it with an extra verb, the other verb goes to the end of the sentence as an infinitive. I'll show you some examples of that here in a minute. Word of caution though, when you are conjugating werden, remind yourself that it is not a modal verb, meaning that it is not conjugated in the same way that modal verbs are normally conjugated. So for instance, the ich form is normal, ich werde. The du and RZS form are irregular, similar to what happens with stem-changing verbs if you've seen a lesson on that. The du form is du wirst, and the RZS form is RZS wird. Then the rest of the forms are normal. Wir werden, ihr werdet, sie werden. So the full conjugation of werden, used for the future tense, meaning will, looks like this. Ich werde, du wirst, sie es wird, wir werden, ihr werdet, sie werden. Here are a few examples saying goodbye to 2020. 2021 werde ich nach draußen gehen. 2021 werde ich nach draußen gehen. In 2021, I will go outside. 2021 werde ich nach draußen gehen. Was wird jetzt machen? Was wird jetzt machen? What will he do now? Was wird jetzt machen? 2021 werden meine Freunde rüberkommen. 2021 werden meine Freunde rüberkommen. In 2021, my friends will come over. 2021 werden meine Freunde rüberkommen. To wrap things up for today, we have the entire conjugation chart of all of the modal auxiliaries plus werden, which I mentioned is used for the future tense. Let's go back through the list. Mögen, to like. Ich mag, du magst, sie es mag, wir mögen, ihr mögt, sie mögen. Möchten, would like. Ich möchte, du möchtest, sie es möchte, wir möchten, ihr möchtet, sie möchten. Müssen, must or to have to. Ich muss, du musst, sie es muss. Wir müssen. Ihr müsst. Sie müssen. Dürfen, may or to be allowed to. Ich darf. Du darfst. Sie, es darf. Wir dürfen. Ihr dürft. Sie dürfen. Können, can or to be able to. Ich kann. Du kannst. Sie, es kann. Wir können. Ihr könnt. Sie können. Sollen, should or shall or to be supposed to. Ich soll. Du sollst. Sie, es soll. Wir sollen. Ihr sollt. Sie sollen. Wollen, to want. Ich will. Du willst. Sie, es will. Wir wollen. Ihr wollt. Sie wollen. Werden, will, used for the future tense. Ich werde. Du wirst. Sie, es wird. Wir werden. Ihr werdet. Sie werden. A couple of months ago I mentioned in one of my videos that there is a new perk available to YouTube channel members. This perk is supported by a company called Emojam. Emojam makes audio GIFs. Basically, they are GIFs that also have audio. You may say, what's different than just having a normal video? First of all, they're much smaller video size, but also they have these things that you can use as overlays on other things throughout your social media posts, or posts that you send to your family and friends, or however it is that you use a normal GIF on your phone now, you can use these GIFs in the same way, but they also come with audio. Ausgezeichnet. Since launching this program, I noticed a few things. First of all, there are a few people who haven't been able to sign in using the correct email address. In order to be able to access the exclusive gifts from this channel for being a channel member, you need to use the same email address that you did when you signed up to become a channel member. Secondly, I didn't think that people had a good enough chance of using this without actually having to go ahead and sign up to be a channel member, so I went ahead and made one of them free. Effective immediately, you can use this gift that is on screen right now, free of charge, just by downloading the Emojam app and searching for me, Herr Antrim. If you would like to use some of these other audio gifts from Emojam, all you have to do is click the join button down below this video, become a channel member, then download their app, sign in using the same email address, and you're ready to go. Then you can start sending these to your friends and family right away. Das ist alles für heute. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!